Good evening from New York. RNC Chairman Michael Steele tried to jumpstart the GOP today, only to be upstaged by an unexpected blast from Michael Steele. Our fifth story in the countdown, Chairman Steele threatens to quit. Were it not for that, we might be extolling with greater reverence this quote from his speech later in the same day. Quote, "This change, my friends, is being delivered in a tea bag, and that's a wonderful thing." Instead, there is this. The chairman's if-then ultimatum to the RNC delivered this morning via Fox News.
There will be no comptroller answering to the Budget Committee instead of you.
Not right now, no. Not if I have anything to do about it.
But that is what's being contemplated.
Well, they can contemplate all they want to, but the reality of it is, if you want a figurehead chairman, you can have a figurehead chairman, but it won't be Michael Steele.
And while the RNC will soon vote on Steele's powers of the purse, it will decide tomorrow on a resolution to rebrand the Democratic Party the Democrat Socialist Party. Steele says he opposes that stunt, but he did not say so during today's speech to Republican leaders.
Today, we are declaring an end to the era of Republicans looking backwards. The era of apologizing for Republican mistakes of the past is now officially over. It is done. The time for trying to fix or focus on the past has ended. The era of Republican navel-gazing, done. We have turned the corner on regret, recrimination, self-pity, and self-doubt.
You heard it. Future Republican mistakes will not be followed by apologies. Also, Mr. Steele is ostensibly done with utterances like this one. Tonight, we tell America we know the past. We know we did wrong. My bad.
The Republican Party is again going to emerge as the party of new ideas. It will take some time for sure. There's no doubt about that. But it is beginning now. It is beginning with us. It is beginning with you. Our governors are emerging with fresh answers to old problems. Some of our brightest stars in Congress are emerging with new approaches.
New ideas, fresh answers, new approaches. Of course, none of those new ideas were actually spelled out during today's speech. As former Congressman Christopher Shays, Republican of Connecticut, confessed to our own Andrea Mitchell today.
I didn't hear any new ideas, but that's the point. I mean, we need to be talking about ideas.
Or having them. Chairman Steele's hefty declarative statements included multiple references to the Republican comeback.
We're going to take the president head on. The honeymoon is over. The two-party system is making a comeback, and that comeback begins today.
President Obama today not getting that memo. Instead, he announced a new national standard for auto emissions, and standing behind him, a first-time ever alliance of auto executives, union leaders, and environmental activists. As for taking the president head-on, Mr. Steele ran through the GOP's greatest hits, or gripes, like the Employee Free Choice Act, though he did not call it thus, and an age-old Republican bogeyman.
We're going to give voice to the growing chorus of Americans who realize that there is a difference between creating wealth and redistributing wealth.
Exactly, because no one remembers the redistribution of wealth under the Bush administration, tax cuts to the wealthiest, and repeated no-bid contracts in Iraq reconstruction, including the $13 billion in suspected combat zone fraud cases and other questionable costs, the vast majority of which linked to KBR, a then subsidiary, later spin-off of Halliburton. And there's the matter of how judiciously Mr. Steele manages money, since according to the Washington Times, the conservative newspaper, when he took the job of chairman, he installed his longtime assistant at almost 3 times what her predecessor made. Chairman Steele also took on head-on the president's popularity.
Folks like him. He's got an easy demeanor. He's a great orator. His campaign style is wonderful. His campaign was based on change and hope. He's young, he's cool, he's hip. He's got a good-looking family. What's not to like? He's got all the qualities America likes in celebrity, so of course he's going to be popular.
And that celebrity slam worked so well the first time it was rolled out last summer that Obama wound up as president. But not to worry, says Steele. The Republican comeback is, quote, underway in states all across America.
Those of you who toil in the vineyard, spending time in communities, in diners, barbershops, and coffee shops where real, everyday, hard-working Americans can be found. You know it's real. You can see it, and you can feel it. This change, my friends, is being delivered in a tea bag, and that's a wonderful thing.
So stirring is the GOP comeback that a brand new Gallup poll finds that the decline in Republican Party affiliation has occurred now among every major demographic group: young, old, rich, poor, middle class, black, white, Hispanic, college grads, non-grads. Only frequent churchgoers have held steady. 39% of Americans now self-identifying or leaning Republican, compared to 53% identifying or leaning Democratic, a combined 13-point net shift since 2001. Time now to call in Newsweek magazine senior Washington correspondent, political columnist, and MSNBC political analyst Howard Feynman. Good evening, Howard.
Hi, Keith.
If Michael Steele is actually threatening to quit, certainly there was some implication there that he would leave the job if it were significantly changed. Are there any key Republicans saying, you know, you have sat too long for any good you have been doing lately, depart, I say, and let us have done with you. In the name of God, go?
Well, they're saying it under their breath, but the problem is they don't think that he would go quietly. So what they're trying to do is take away his authority to run the finances of the RNC, which is one of the few things that actually matters here. Look, they sat there, they applauded what was really a pretty empty speech, Keith. I saw it, I read it carefully, I studied it for substance. It was pretty close to substance-free. The notion that this was really a rousing thing that really would get the Republican state chairmen up on their chairs applauding didn't happen.
He seems unique in recent party history in either case. Many chairmen are lightning rods, and some of them are lightning bolts. He seems to be the lightning rod and the lightning bolt. I mean, he's upstaged himself today. Has anybody gotten that point across to him? Because it seems to repeat itself, and has nobody said anything?
Well, I don't think he upstaged himself. I think he missed an opportunity here. He had the attention of the political world, and really, there was nothing in the speech particularly. If he had wanted to excoriate this administration, if he'd wanted to raise the specter of debt off into the limitless future, he could have done it if he'd done a little homework. He said that his heroes are this party. He looks to the tradition of Edmund Burke and William F. Buckley and Ronald Reagan. Believe me, those guys knew their stuff, and if they wanted to attack somebody, you would remember it. Part of the problem here is even the attacks were forgettable because they were so routine. It was basically a lazy speech, and that doesn't augur well for his organizational ability. There have been some great Republican chairmen, the most famous in recent times being Bill Brock, a name nobody's heard of now. But 30 years ago, he really organized the Republican Party. This guy's not doing any of that. Doesn't seem to be much prospect of his doing so. Is
there a mixed message between Steele and the Republican who's been most prominent the last 3 weeks in terms of publicity, Dick Cheney, or is this... you know, being Republican means no longer having to say you're sorry idea. Is this a way of Steele trying to tune in to the defiance of Cheney, if not necessarily the stigma of Cheney?
Well, I think he might like to try to look forward, that is Michael Steele, but he's got a problem. Dick Cheney is much more powerful and resonant at the base of the Republican Party in some respects than Michael Steele is or will be, and Dick Cheney's much more forceful about making his opinions known. And Dick Cheney's out there, and nobody, least of all Michael Steele, is going to make him shut up. And the Obama administration is very cleverly and coolly citing the past when necessary and stepping back from it when they need to, thus keeping Cheney in the headlines.
And what about keeping Steele in the headlines? Last question on this topic, Howard. What do Democratic leaders think off the record about Steele? Because they don't seem to say very much about him on the record.
Well, they love having him there, frankly. Here's an example of his impotence. You've got a situation in Kentucky where Senator Mitch McConnell, the Republican Senate leader, is in open warfare with Jim Bunning, the other Republican senator from Kentucky who's up for re-election. McConnell doesn't want him to run. Bunning wants to run. If Steele had any clout as a Republican chairman, he'd bring them both in, sit them down, and say, let's settle our differences one way or another. He's not effective enough to do that, and that's why people like David Plouffe, the Democratic chairman, would love to have Michael Steele re-elected next year.
Howard Feynman of Newsweek and MSNBC. Great thanks as always, Howard.